Hi, this is Les Posen from FlightWise Fear of Flying, back with you from my trip in the Middle East and back in Australia in late October. Lots of flights coming up for me with patients, so I thought I would bring you up to speed on some of my ideas that you will hopefully find helpful. There are some central ideas when you're working with people who experience anxiety, especially when it comes to things like flying, or for that matter, any other form of transport, elevators, cars, being on the freeway, and extending over into things like giving speeches, public performances, and the like. There are three terms that I want to make mention of which come naturally to hand for people who experience anxiety because they seek to use these things. Those three terms are calm, distraction, and control. And the idea that many people discover is that if I can feel calm approaching my feared situation or within it, or if I can distract myself from the uncalmness, from the lack of calmness, then I'll slide into calmness. And perhaps then, if I can get those things under control, I will feel more in control because I need control. Some people will self-describe as I'm a control freak and I need to be in a situation where I'm in control of what I can control. In fact, if anything, they go beyond that into I need to control everything. So sometimes they find jobs where they can be micromanagers, so often self-employed, or in charge of other people or organizations where they can pull the strings and feel in control. Of course, most of us who go through life realize that that might be an ideal kind of way to operate, but the reality in life is that there are so many things that are outside of our control that it can sometimes make life a little intolerable, and we can ease our way into a state of anxiety when we demand that we must have control. In a plane, of course, this can be one of the most challenging places to wish to have control, because there's so much control you must give up in order to simply be there and be what appears to be a passive passenger while others drive the plane, control where the planes are going, engineer the plane, maintain the plane, and so forth and so on. And then of course all those people need to respond to moment changes that might happen in flight, and that is mainly things that we can't control, and that's weather. All we can do is manage what the plane does within weather and make predictions as to what the plane will do in certain types of weather, and either stay on the ground until it's safe to move. This happened to me last Saturday in Sydney. The start of the Invictus Games were delayed because this huge rolling thunderstorm came into Sydney. We were sitting in a place called Woolloomooloo having dinner, and the place just basically shut down and nothing came into the airport or out of the airport in Sydney for at least an hour. And we were able to watch lots of planes circling around 70 or 80 miles away from touchdown in Sydney because it simply was not safe to move into the airport vicinity. That put our flight out of Sydney back to Melbourne in some peril, in the sense that we had to wait for an inbound aircraft to be able to take a 10:05 p.m. aircraft home to Melbourne, and Sydney has an 11 p.m. curfew, so that looked like when we got to the airport 50-50 chance that we wouldn't get home. We'd have to overnight. Indeed, we are able to get back because the inbound plane from Melbourne did come in on time. One of those issues that you can't control and that you must make contingencies for, and of course this is how airlines and airports for that matter operate all the time, on second, third, fourth, fifth contingencies, and just keep things flowing along. And of course lots of passengers themselves don't know what goes on under the hood, so to speak, and simply demand, well, my plane must be here, or if there's a sick member of crew, well, surely you've got half a dozen others sitting around waiting. Well, there are crews sitting around, but it's not as if you can just sort of snap your fingers and there they are magically appearing. Sometimes we do have to wait for crew to come in on other planes from other cities, and things can be delayed. So, one more time, we're going to look at concepts of calm, concepts of distraction, concepts of control. Let's turn to a discussion of being calm first. Many patients who come to see me believe that I'm going to teach them techniques to be calm on board a plane or in the waiting area or in the weeks leading up to a flight. Got to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. And one of the things that I will often say to them is, if during the course of our work and if during the course of your flights you should experience calmness, it's a bonus. It is not the target behavior. It's an outcome of the target behaviors that we want to work on, the skill set that I think will be helpful to people. It just so happens that calmness may end up being an artifact of that, an outcome. It may only last for a few moments on board the flight. It's a little along the lines that if I win lotto, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. Well, no, you may have certain conditions that will allow you more opportunities to be happy, looking after your health, going to fascinating places and having less worry about what choices you make. But it doesn't guarantee happiness. And the idea that I must only board a plane or be on a plane in a calm state is likely to lead to a lack of success. Indeed, if you look at people who board a plane, who would self-describe as not being at all fearful of flying, many of them would say that they're not particularly calm when they board. They're excited, some might be a little apprehensive, some might be eager, but no one's calm. Even the professionals who greet you at the door, the cabin managers, may have a professional demeanour of appearing calm, something they're trained to do. So occasionally you may bump into a cabin manager at the front of the plane as you board, who gives the professional appearance of calm. It's a professional demeanour. It's trained. It's part of the job. Under the hood, they're looking at every passenger boarding with the eyes of a hawk. Is this person going to give me trouble? Are they drunk? Are they ill? Are they a commercially important passenger? Have I met this passenger before, and therefore they need to be treated in a certain way? And the same thing when you leave. When you duck your head in as you happen to board the plane, and should you be able to look in and have a look at the flight deck and watch the pilots at work, you may gain some strength and say, well, they look pretty calm, but let me assure you, again, that's a professional demeanour. They're going about the job of preparing this aircraft for the next part of the mission in what appears to be a calm fashion, but it's a very, very focused fashion. Their arousal levels are up. They are checking, cross-checking and rechecking data, numbers. Often weight of the aircraft, often fuel, of course, often the weather that they can expect, any last minute changes and so forth and so on. And of course keeping an eye on the clock, because there's a window when they are permitted to push back, take off and so forth, and if that window is missed, there may be considerable delays. Okay? So everyone on board who greets you, who appears to be calm, something you might wish to emulate, in fact is not calm. They are very focused, they have a job to do, and they are looking at you like a hawk if you meet them. Okay? I often will say to people that maybe a third of passengers who got on board a plane are quite apprehensive. They'd rather get to their destination any other way if it could be arranged. Another third might be take it or leave it. Whatever happens, happens. They have contingency plans. Their worries about flying are not about the usual fear of flying worries. Their worries about will we arrive in time? Will I make my connection? Is it possible my upgrade will come through? Will my luggage arrive on time? And will I get to my meeting? We've got a very close connection. Will I get to the important meeting I'm heading up for on time? They may also be somewhat concerned and less than calm because they've given themselves maybe just the duration of the flight to get their presentation ready to go. So they really can't relax on board the plane at all. And then there's another third of the passengers who just love the whole concept of flying. Delays, lost luggage, whatever else, it's all part of the journey, part of the adventure, and they just accept that. Okay, so bear that in mind when you board a plane. My rule of thumb kind of things about flying. Again, let's come back to calmness. The object is not to feel nothing, to feel so relaxed. 1 out of 10 is even too much. It needs to be 0 if I'm going to do this properly. And I want to suggest to you that will set you up for failure and therefore avoidance of flying. The idea is that whatever sensations I experience in a normal flight, I can handle. There are certain situations where I'm going to experience sensations induced by the plane. They're G-forces, they're noises and sounds. It's the movement of the plane. They will induce into everybody on that plane certain reactions. Okay? G-forces will have an effect on our inner ear where our acceleration through space is being measured. There will be loud noises that will grab our attention. There will be things that happen in the cabin where we're meant to look up and see what's going on. So there's lots of data coming through our sensory mechanisms that will bring most people out of a sense of relaxation and calmness into a zone of preparation. And of course, airlines spend a lot of money doing in-flight videos for the safety briefing to try and get your attention, to keep you interested rather than reading or listening to music, because they really want you to know what you should do in certain unlikely but possible situations. So, calmness. The difficulty when one has spent a lifetime dealing with anxiety is that anything that gets us from calm is then labelled as awful. We go from 0 to 10 on our anxiety scale straight away. And the task is to be able to learn to modulate, move around our 0 to 10 scale. If it gets to a 3 or a 4, I know what that looks like, I know what that feels like, I can manage that. If it gets to a 5 or a 6, I might need to do some special things to bring it back down a little bit, because I don't want it escalating up to a 7 or 8, which might become my new panic stations. And we want to be able to know, what do I do if I feel like I'm getting to a 7 or 8? That's the work that happens in therapy, or if you like, in psychological consultation. So here's the important thing. Do not aim to be calm. Be wary of using apps and books and all sorts of things that will teach you how to be calm or mindful or meditative on a plane. All very nice. It's great. Enjoy. But do not expect it to be the right thing to do if you're going to overcome your fear of flying. It's an outcome. It's a byproduct. It's a nice thing when it happens. It's not the target behavior. The target behavior is a set of skills to manage what happens to you on the plane, no matter what the plane does. Whether it's late, whether it's turbulent, whether there's noises that you don't understand, you need to be able to know, I can manage this regardless. Okay? Very important. So when you come to see a psychologist who's well versed in anxiety management when it comes to flying, do not expect them to say, yes, I'm going to teach you some calming techniques. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that I don't teach people breathing techniques. Okay? These are some of the hallmarks that you'll see in some of the apps that you can get on your phone. It's on my watch, how to breathe, whatever else. The most important thing about breathing is not that it should induce calming, but that it should induce a state of focus so that you can be in the right zone to be able to carry out well-planned and well-rehearsed activities that help you self-manage, that lead to a state of personal control. That's all that breathing should do. Just render you in a state that doesn't say, I'm now calm, that says, I'm now in a position to be able to carry out well-rehearsed routines. Those routines might be behavioral, what you do with your body. They may be cognitive, how you think about something, how you evaluate something. That may then lead to a change of emotional status. That is, I'm not feeling so dreadful, I'm not feeling so worried. I'm thinking the right thoughts, and I'm also putting my sensations, what I hear, see, feel, in the right context, so I don't panic about having those things. Okay? In other words, we don't panic about the panic. The thing about panic to bear in mind is, it's not this business. One can be very, very quiet and still be feeling very panicky. And the idea behind working with panic is that one needs to find out what are the triggers that may induce in me a sense of loss of composure, where I don't know what to do next. I've lost the plot, forgotten the plan. And so the idea is to be able to rehearse and plan what to do and have a role to play in your personal control. Let's now move to discussing distraction.